Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling something that, well, I think is on a lot of parents' minds: navigating the world of children's books and the ever present screens.
That's right. They seem like separate things, but how we choose both really shapes a child's development in pretty profound ways.
Definitely. And we've pulled together a really solid set of resources to help us and you make sense of it all. Think of this as, your cheat sheet.
Yeah, a good way to put it.
We've got guidance from the Carnegie Library of Pittsburgh on what makes a children's book truly high quality.
Mm.
Then there's a big scientific review from PMC, that's the Public Medical Content Database, looking at screen time effects.
A really comprehensive one.
Plus, practical tips from Women Deserve Better on picking age-appropriate TV, reading advice from WIDA and Raising Children Network.
And more. Right.
Guidance from HeadStart.gov on books for babies and toddlers, a discussion from Reddit's Science-Based Parenting on screen time concerns.
Oh, interesting. Reddit threads.
Yes, and another one from a toddler sharing favorite books. And finally, a really important piece from Unconditional Education about representation in kids' literature.
Wow. Okay. That's quite a stack.
It is. So our mission today is pretty clear. We want to equip you with a solid understanding so you can make informed, confident choices about both the books and the screens in a child's life.
Ultimately helping you foster that healthy development and hopefully a real love of learning.
Okay, so let's dive into the books first. The Carnegie Library points out something important. Well, yeah, any reading is good for building those basic literacy skills.
Like vocabulary, knowing print has meaning, all that stuff.
Exactly. But they suggest aiming higher, looking for stories that are really well written, meaningful, and actually right for the child's age.
Right. It's not just about exposure to words, but the richness of the story, the quality of the art that can really deepen engagement.
So how do we find these gems? Awards seem like a good starting point. The Caldecott Medal for illustrations.
The Coretta Scott King Awards, the Pura Belpré Award.
Yeah, and even local ones like Carnegie Library's own Best Books for Babies. These signal quality, right?
Definitely. Those committees put in a lot of work evaluating books on writing, art, the whole package. It's a valuable shortcut for parents.
And beyond awards, they mentioned reviews?
Yes, using resources like Novelist Plus K8. Look for those professional reviews from places like Kirkus or School Library Journal. Especially starred reviews. Those usually mean something special.
Good tip. And for nonfiction books.
Ah, yeah. The advice there is pretty straightforward. Newer is generally better, especially for things like science, tech, culture, stuff that changes quickly.
You don't want outdated info.
Exactly. It can be misleading. And crucially, they highlight librarians. Talk to your local library staff. They're amazing resources for recommendations.
Seriously underrated resource.
Totally. And libraries often have great online lists, too, sorted by age or topic.
What about the classics, though? The books we grew up with?
They often have timeless appeal, for sure. Beautiful language, great stories. But the Carnegie Library rightly points out that some older books might have outdated views, maybe even discriminatory stuff.
Yeah. Something to be aware of.
It is. And librarians can often suggest modern books with similar themes, but, more relevant perspective.
That's helpful. Okay, what about graphic novels? Sometimes they get a bad rap, like they're not real books.
Yeah, that's a total misconception. Graphic novels are powerful. They really engage kids in figuring out how the words and pictures work together. That's visual literacy right there.
Okay.
And there are tons of high-quality ones made just for kids. Again, look for reviews, awards. Same principles apply.
Got it. And then there are the character books, the Paw Patrol or Disney princess books. Kids love them.
They do. And that motivation, that excitement to pick up any book because it has a favorite character, that's valuable. The Carnegie Library acknowledges that. But yeah, they might not always meet the same high literary or artistic standards as original stories. It's fine to have them, but balance is good. Mix them in with other types of books.
Makes sense. And this really stuck with me. Letting kids choose some of their own books, even if it's the same Paw Patrol book again.
Oh, absolutely crucial. That's how you build print motivation, that inner drive to read. Giving them some choice makes them way more invested.
And rereading favorites is actually good.
So good. They notice new things each time, get familiar with words, understand story structure better. It really reinforces those literacy skills.
Okay, so it's about offering quality, but also nurturing that personal connection and choice.
Hmm.
Right, let's pivot to screens. This feels like the trickier one for a lot of people.
It really does. And that big PMC review confirms it's, well, a double-edged sword. There are potential benefits, sure, but also significant risks if we're not careful. Cognitive, language, social, emotional. It hits all areas.
Okay, cognitive first. They mentioned ebooks and learning apps can potentially be good, like for literacy?
They can be, yes, that's the upside we hear about. But the flip side is research linking excessive screen time, and especially multitasking with media.
Like texting while watching something.
Exactly. Linking that to poorer executive function, things like working memory, impulse control, switching tasks. And studies have shown negative links to academic performance too.
Wow. So the passive watching could actually hurt the skills needed for learning.
That seems to be the concern. And they do note that maybe it's the multitasking itself, the divided attention that's the bigger issue, not just the screen time amount. More research is needed there to sort of untangle that.
Interesting complexity. What about language development?
And this is a big one. The review stresses how vital interaction with adult is. The worry is that too much screen time just cuts down on the amount and the quality of that back and forth talk.
Right.
But how kids use screens matters.
Hmm.
Is a parent involved? Is the content appropriate? Is it interactive?
So parking a toddler in front of a cartoon is different from watching an educational show together and talking about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The review suggests more screen time very early on seems to have negative effects on language.
Hmm.
Starting later might be less impactful, maybe even okay in some ways.
Okay.
But background TV, just having it on that, consistently comes up as bad for language, executive function, cognition, in kids under 5.
Even if they're not really watching.
Apparently so. But on the other hand, watching with a parent, co-viewing, can actually boost expressive language.
Yeah.
But overall, high screen time, like 2-3 hours plus a day, is linked to more behavior problems and smaller vocabularies.
That really underscores the need for that human connection. Okay, social emotional impacts. This worries me.
Yeah, the PMC review hits on several points. More screen time is linked to less time outdoors, which has its own impact, and it's associated with poorer mental health, obesity risk, sleep problems, depression, anxiety symptoms.
Mm.
And some studies link early TV exposure, like 6 to 18 months old, to more emotional reactivity, aggression later on.
That young. Wow.
Yeah, and it can track over time. More screen time at age 4, linked to lower emotional understanding at 6. TV in the bedroom at 6 predicts lower emotional understanding at 8.
That's quite specific.
It is. And gaming specifically was linked to lower emotional understanding in boys and more depressive symptoms.
So different screen activities might have different effects.
Seems likely. The review also mentions violent content, fast-paced stuff.
Mm.
It can trigger dopamine, reward pathways. Some researchers think this might contribute to ADHD-like behaviors or antisocial tendencies
Mm.
and addictive screen use,
Mm.
linked to weaker social coping skills, even actual changes in brain structure related to emotion and social stuff.
That's sobering. But there were some positives mentioned too, right? It wasn't all bad.
No, not all bad. It's important to be balanced. Screens can be good educational tools, like
Mhm.
blogs helping older kids write or access to health info, and high-quality educational shows, usually for kids 2 and up.
Like Sesame Street or Daniel Tiger.
Exactly. Those can support language, literacy, cognitive skills, positive racial attitudes, even imaginative play. Especially helpful for kids from disadvantaged backgrounds.
Okay, so it really boils down to how screens are used and the quality of the content.
Right.
So practically, how do we manage this? What strategies work?
Well, the PMC review says parental awareness and simple actions actually make a difference, and early habits stick. So starting early with limits is key.
Okay.
Interventions that focus on reducing screen time seem most successful. Things like monitoring devices, knowing how much time is actually being spent.
That can be eye-opening.
Totally. Family TV turnoff challenges, setting conditions like screens after chores, parent education, those help.
Makes sense. A proactive approach. Did they mention roles for doctors or schools?
Yes. They suggest info in birth kits, advice from health visitors, and schools should have clear stances on screen time, both in school and for homework, and communicate that well.
And the Reddit discussion you mentioned, science-based parenting, did it echo these points?
Very much so. Big concern about screens replacing other vital things.
Yeah.
Outdoor play, real-world interaction, just messing about.
Yeah, that displacement idea.
Exactly. People there generally felt occasional screen time, like when a kid is sick, probably isn't harmful if it's not the norm.
Yeah.
But the context was huge. Watching together is better than passive solo viewing.
And the worry about screens being used instead of interaction.
Huge point. And background TV got a lot of negative comments too. Reduces parent-child talk, might interfere with language learning even if the kid isn't glued to it.
Right, that constant noise can't be good for focus. Okay, so If we are allowing some TV, how do we choose quality shows? Women deserve better, had advice on this.
They did. Very practical stuff. Their
Okay.
main point. Better quality, age-appropriate shows mean fewer negative effects,
Yeah.
even if the time spent watching is the same.
Interesting. So what should we look for?
Several things. First, is it really age-appropriate? Check ratings, read reviews for violence, mature themes, language. Second, does it align with your family's values? Some shows might push views you don't agree with, even subtly.
Good point. And character behavior.
Yeah, kids imitate.
Hmm.
Look for shows where characters model kindness, problem-solving, cooperation, not, being disrespectful or making dumb choices all the time.
Makes sense. What else?
Consider if it might be too scary or upsetting for your specific child. Kids have different sensitivities. And then, is there any educational value? Nature shows, language learning, even just clever writing can be a bonus.
So how do we find these shows?
Read online reviews. Common Sense Media is a great resource. Preview episodes yourself if you can. Watch with your child, sometimes great for discussion. Ask other parents, but, take recommendations with a grain of salt as values differ.
And they mentioned some common mistakes parents make.
Yes, like assuming I watched it as a kid, so it's fine. Times change. Or just relying on a G rating doesn't always mean what you think. Or letting kids watch something just because their friends do. And assuming one good episode means the whole series is okay, or that all cartoons are innocent, definitely not true.
Lots to think about. It really requires being an active gatekeeper. Okay, let's switch back to reading, specifically fostering that love right from the start, infancy even. Raising Children Network had insights.
Oh yeah, tons. They stress that reading, storytelling, talking, singing, doing these every day is massive for development. Helps with language, literacy foundations, imagination, brain development, social emotional skills.
And bonding.
And bonding, absolutely, is a huge bonus. And start early, like right from birth.
Even tiny babies.
Yep. Hearing your voice, seeing bright pictures in board books, it all matters. And it's not just reading words on a page. Telling stories yourself, singing songs, reciting rhymes, equally important.
Making up stories, sharing family stories.
I love it. Even just talking about the pictures. And language, read in whatever language you're most comfortable with. Dual language books are great too, or read in one language, talk about it in another.
Okay. And when should we read? Bedtime is classic, but...
Anytime. Bath time, waiting rooms, car rides, integrate it. But also, know when to stop if the kid isn't into it right then. Keep it positive.
And if you don't have a book?
Look around. Words are everywhere. Cereal boxes, street signs, clothes. Make it a game.
Love that. And specific tips for sharing books.
Yeah, routine helps. Cozy reading spot. Minimize distractions. Hold them close. Use funny voices, gestures, ask questions. Encourage repetition. Connect stories to their life. Let them pick favorites.
Rereading again.
Yes, it's so important. And short sessions are totally fine, especially for little ones.
Okay, what kind of books for different ages? Head Start and Raising Children Network had specifics.
They did. For infants, say 0 to 18 months. Think large, bright, bold pictures, simple images, wordless books, or just a few words. Nursery rhymes. Sturdy board or clock books are essential.
Things they can chew on.
Exactly. Simple stories about familiar things, action songs. As they get closer to one, maybe a line or two per page, by 12, 18 months, familiar characters, more action, simple plots about their world.
And for toddlers, like 1.5 to 2.5 years old, that Reddit thread had loads of examples.
It did. Toddlers still love familiar characters, but can handle more detail. Simple cause and effect stories. Repetitive text, rhymes, songs are still huge.
What were some favorites mentioned there?
Oh, where's my cow? Llama Llama. Golden books like Pookie Little Puppy, Hand, Fingers, Thumb, Eric Carle, Dr. Seuss, Pete the Cat, Sandra Boynton.
Classics and modern hits.
Yeah, Little Blue Truck, Dragons Love Tacos, construction books. Lots of great stuff that really hits that toddler sweet spot.
It's great to get those real-world recommendations. And libraries came up again?
Big time. Free books, exploring story times. Make library visits an adventure.
Absolutely. Okay, finally, let's talk about representation. Unconditional education highlighted this as vital.
So vital. It's not just a nice to have. Children's books are windows onto the world, shaping how kids see themselves and others.
It's about seeing yourself reflected, right?
Yeah.
Culturally, ethnically.
Yes, and socioeconomically too. Seeing characters like you validates your identity, fosters pride. It says you belong.
And for kids who don't see themselves reflected often.
It can be incredibly powerful. And for all kids, seeing diverse characters builds empathy. It helps break down prejudice before it starts.
How does it build empathy?
Books transport you into someone else's shoes. Reading about a character with a disability, for instance, can foster real understanding. Seeing diverse characters in complex, non-stereotypical roles challenges assumptions.
It normalizes diversity.
Exactly. And for kids from marginalized groups, seeing positive role models who share their identity, that's transformative. It shows them what's possible, builds self-belief.
It empowers them.
Totally. So the call to action is clear. We all need to make sure kids have access to books that celebrate diversity in all its forms. It's a collective responsibility.
Wow. Okay, we've covered a huge amount. Let's try to wrap up the key takeaways. High quality books matter. Look for good writing, art, age appropriateness. Awards and reviews help.
Right. And screen time needs careful management. Be aware of the risks to development, especially with passive viewing for young kids. But quality content used interactively can have benefits.
Parental involvement, clear rules, choosing content wisely, those are key for screens. And background TV, probably best to turn it off.
And foster that love of reading from day one. Read, talk, sing, make it interactive and fun. Let kids choose sometimes, reread favorites, use the library.
And crucially, seek out diverse books where all children can see themselves and learn about others. Representation really matters.
It really does. Being intentional about both books and screens is just so important for raising healthy, curious, empathetic kids.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. In this world that's just, full of screens, how can we consciously create spaces that really prioritize both that deep connection you get from stories and a balanced, thoughtful approach to technology? How do we make sure every child feels seen, heard, and inspired?
Yeah. Think about the next book you pick up or the next time you hand over a tablet. What's the intention behind that choice?
Something to chew on. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.